life took its course, I ended up in the economic mobility realm where I focus on financial coaching, where I do one-on-one financial coaching, financial literacy, and work various vital sites to do free tax preparation for the community. Currently, our Family Source Center is called Barrio Action Youth and Family Center. Our focus is in the northeastern region of Los Angeles within the El Sereno community. Our whole focus is to uplift families out of poverty, and currently our financial empowerment program is focusing on providing financial literacy, such as this one, such as this workshop today, and doing one-on-one financial coaching and helping families navigate their personal finances. Before we begin today's discussion, I would like to acknowledge the current economic and healthcare crisis that our country is currently facing. Finances in general is not an easy conversation to have with yourself, with family members, or with other colleagues in general. And it's even harder during this time of crisis. Finances is a delicate subject to most of us, and it can be traumatic, it can be stressful. But if left unchecked, it can continue controlling us for the long run. And that's what I would like to touch on some basics for today. As we begin our discussion, some of the things that we'll talk about is addressing finances from a social work perspective. Coming from a nonprofit organization, it's very important to do so. And touch a little bit about behavioral economics. Then we'll get into the magic word, the B word. In this case, the B word is budgeting. And then we'll go ahead and how to create a budget to fit your current reality. And then at the very end, we'll go ahead and touch base on some debt reduction strategies that you can hopefully take home today and apply it to your personal finances. Okay. Normally, I'm used to talking about finances in a room. Obviously, we're doing physical distancing, but some rules of thumb that I normally have, even in person or virtually, is that everyone's finances are different. Everyone's values are different. And financial security may not be the same for one person or the other. And we're all in different stages of our life. Okay, so perceiving finances. Try to aim and meet the participant, you're the participant where you are in life. We have to acknowledge your individual struggles and challenges. And ultimately, we like to think that you are the expert of your own personal finances, not me as a financial coach, not any other financial advisor. You ultimately are the one controlling your finances. You understand what you're experiencing, what you're going through in life, and you are ultimately the expert of your finances. The second part of this is behavioral economics, right? Many times our financial circumstances are based on some of the decisions we make, some of the habits we have, and on top of that, our personal beliefs that we really have. Things that add on to how we spend each dollar are influencing factors. Be friends, families, and then at the same time, what is our relationship with money? Our relationship with money can be something that we've carried over time through our growing up as kids, how we saw our parents manage their money. Those are all play a big role in how we have a relationship with money. In my personal experience, coming from a low economic background, I knew what that extra dollar meant for my family. But then as I got into adulthood and then new doors opened up and free money became so accessible, things like student loans and credit cards definitely made an impact on me as an adult. And I always thought the next paycheck would end up covering whatever I ended up putting on my credit card or my student loans. And at that time, I thought student loans and getting an apartment would be a great idea. But it created a bigger hole than I anticipated. And then we face the consequences later. Okay, so diving into it, more money, more problems. So this is a quote from the notorious B.I.G. song. So how does behavioral economics work? How do we get influence? So besides everything that you said, one of the tendencies that we tend to have is that as humans, sometimes when we get our hands on more money, we come up with new reasons to use that money. So, we think that if we get more money, we're going to end up paying it finally to pay off the credit card. Finally, we can start saving. Truth of the matter is, sometimes we get stuck in the cycle. We work really hard. Who doesn't want more money? So we work really hard. We get a raise. We get that promotion, or we get that second job. We get our side hustle going on, and we finally have more money. But then once we get a few more dollars in our pockets, we come up with new reasons or identify new ways. Oh, I suddenly need this. I suddenly need that. And then we're back to square one, where we run out of money, and we find ourselves trying to figure out how we can get more money. Right, and then so some of the influencing factors, to add on, what influences our pocket. As we get older, we start getting new knowledge, new things become more important than others. Our thinking style changes. Our social environments, like I said earlier, friends, family, tend to swing our emotions, whether we spend that dollar. And like I said before, inherent tendencies, personal values, cultures, and attitudes all play a part. It's present when we have a birthday party. It's present when it's Black Friday. It's present if we're religious and we're going to church and we have to make an offering. Those are all play part of our finances in one way or the other. Okay, so where does your money go? So I'm gonna talk, now we begin the conversation about that B word I mentioned earlier. In this instance, the B word is a budget. And we kind of tend to think about a budget almost as a diet. When we go on a diet, a diet is not your best friend. You feel restricted to life. And in some way, we kind of think about a budget the exact same way. We feel like if we decide to do a budget or follow a budget, you're restricting your life. But the truth of the matter is a budget is a plan. Typically in a budget, you categorize your expenditures, and it helps you understand where that money is going and what areas are you spending your money the most. A budget is very personal. Building off of what we were saying, it's based on your current income, the needs of your family, values and views. But the most important thing is that a budget prevents mindless spending. It's not meant to restrict you from life, from the things you like. It's supposed to help you get closer to goals, and it's something that can be used at every stage of your life. Whether you experience a job loss, whether you got a new promotion, any stage of your life, it's important to learn how to do a budget for yourself. And the sooner we learn how to do a budget, the better we will be prepared for the future. Okay, so if you've ever taken a financial literacy course, I'm sure you've encountered these two words, the needs and wants. Needs being the expenses that are essential for your survival, and then wants being any of the extra things that we in life are not essential for your survival. So let's go down the list really quickly. Needs would be as a top priority for survival, your housing, of course, and your rent or mortgage you may have. Transportation, and I guess in this scenario, the most essential thing would be getting to and from work or going to the grocery stores. Food would be just groceries, not eating out. Basic utilities would be water and power, trash, sewers, not including cable TV, not including this newest smartphone, the newest, any other item that you can think that might be a luxury. And essential clothing, right? Not including luxury clothing. On the want section, like I said earlier, it'll be everything else. Eating out, Uber Eats, this during this time around, it's very popular. Online shopping has become very popular. But there's two sections that I highlighted in green. Those are the ones that I want you to know for today. Those are financial goals, which we'll be touching base on a little bit later, and then the non-negotiables, right? So those are the two main ones that I would like to prioritize for this conversation. Of course, needs, we can kind of figure out what those are. But non-negotiables is a want. You can survive without them, but non-negotiables would be things that you consider essential to your happiness, essential to your mental health, essential to your physical health. And the other day, I just recently had a conversation with a gentleman who came in for some help. He was telling me about the struggles that his family is facing, and everybody's living back at home. He had a college student, he has younger kids, they're not going to school anymore. And one of the things that came up was how Netflix has been one of those essential items for his family, seeing that they're all at home and there's nowhere really for them to go besides being at home. So for them to be able to survive this or to find some sort of happiness, to him is non-negotiable was having that Netflix account, which the family tends to gather around. So everybody has non-negotiables. Everybody's going to have something that they prize and feel that they need. It is a want, but they want to set it as a priority. All right. All right, so how do we begin looking at our personal finances? So the way that we work at it here at Barrio Action, we break it down to 4 stages, right? We first look at your current reality. We create a very rough budget looking at your current reality. Next stage is we look at what your dreams are, what your family's dreams are, what your goals are, because if we're going to change your habits, we need something to strive for. We need something that's going to be motivating enough for you to change some of the adjustments in it. Third is once we have that motivation, once we know our current reality is arriving, where we want to go towards to. And these 3 examples that I have here, surviving debt, saving or investing or paying off debts, are just just some few examples, not necessarily all of them, but we're going to be focusing on those 3 for today. Once we know where we want to go, where we want to put every dollar, then we create our final budget that really aligns with our goals once we decide where we're at. Okay, so I know it may seem very common to those that have already created a budget, and just to review, when we're thinking about our monthly income, our current, so this is stage 1, we're reviewing our current reality. So we want to gather 2 months worth of pay stubs. We want to see what trends we have there. And we're calculating the net pay for after taxes or your take home pay. Other things that you want to consider is the money you get from any other second job, any side hustles, if you're working on tips, interest, and dividends, if you're investing, any public assistance that you may be getting, CalFresh or child support, all those things that are coming in are forms of income. Monthly expenses, if you're not tracking them, some of the best ways to look at it is looking simply at your bank statements and seeing where that money is going. And so then we calculate. So we're going to end up in one of these 3 regions. We're either noticing we're spending a little bit more or spending a lot more right now than what we're bringing in. We're breaking even, or we're at a surplus. And we have to look at it and see if we're happy with some of the decisions, or can we modify some of the decisions we've made. And sometimes there is, we can't make any modifications. And at this time, a lot of families are surviving. Stage 2 of this process will be to sit down and visualize your goals. Whether it's, of course, we can't go on vacation right now, but typically pre-COVID, some of the things that I have participants to think about, like if it's the vacations, if it's paying down debt, if it's going back to school or saving for your children's school, or even you're at a place where you can buy a house. It's important to visualize because it would help us motivate us to get there. So some of the techniques that we use here is mind mapping, doing a personal journaling, or any way of visualizing your goal, or having a picture in front of you every day of where you're trying to go. And I really briefly want to mention this. It's also important to create SMART financial goals. And in this example, the SMART abbreviation stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So an example of this can be, so the idea of this is that you aim for a goal and you break it down into steps. So an example would be, say, I want to save for an emergency fund. I want to save for an emergency fund, and my goal is to save $1,000. That's how much I need. That's my idea of my emergency fund. I want to reach my goal, let's say a year from now. So I want to reach my goal by September 2021. In order for me to get there, roughly I need about $84 every month. So that's my goal. So I'm gonna break it down to smaller portions. So $84 every month is my goal for the next 12 months for me to finally have a financial emergency fund. Okay, so this is the idea that we can use to break down our bigger goals to smaller goals. And then, and of course, life happens, and sometimes things, an emergency happens, medical emergency, car trouble, that our goals need to be readjusted, and our time frame may be readjusted. Maybe our goals, initially we started out with 1 year, but now something happened. It might take us a year and a half to get there. And that's totally fine as long as we get the picture and we understand where we are going. Okay, so stage 3, we already had explored how much we're spending in that rough first budget. We are looking at where our money is going. We are visualizing where we want to go. Now it's our time to choose, right? Do we want to focus on, during this hard time on staying afloat, paying for the essentials? Do we want to focus on paying off debt? Or are we fortunate enough that we have some extra money and we are able to save or start investing our money? If you don't have an idea of where to begin, I wanted to give you at least an example of how to choose a path. And you don't have to choose these paths. This is an example of somebody really famous on YouTube. His name is Dave Ramsey, if you haven't heard of him already. And he breaks down your goals into 7 steps. And personally, for the people that are participants that I work with, I focus on the first 8 steps. I'm not a professional investor, but the first 3 steps is what I focus on. And his recommendation is step 1, save $1,000 for your emergency fund. And this idea comes from that if you're struggling, the idea is to create an emergency fund, because in case you have another emergency, like I said earlier, whether it's a medical emergency, whether it's your car breaking down, or any emergency that you have, we always need that buffer. So in this scenario, it's $1,000. Another scenario that I see is $500. So whatever it is that you think you'll be comfortable having as an emergency fund. Step 2 of his baby step is paying out all debt using the Snowball method, in which we will actually review how to use the Snowball method to pay off the debt. And then once we paid off all of our debt, step 3 will be increasing that emergency funds and now having a fully funded emergency funds for 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in case you lose your job or anything serious might happen. Okay, and then he has other steps, but we won't focus on those for today. Okay, so the method I love using, and there's so many methods you can use when it comes to budgeting. This is what we like to call budgeting to zero. So earlier we had our income, our expenses, relatively the same thing. What we're gonna do is we're gonna try to get our income and our expenses to equal exactly zero, not $1 less, not $1 more. And it's just tracking every single dollar and giving it a name. And this is what the method we're going to be using for today's example, right? So we already did the rough budget. This one is the second budget is going to be different, because the second budget, we're for our expenses now, we're not going to look at our bank account statements and look at what we spent. We're looking towards the future. So what we're going to do is we're going to list all of our monthly expenses from highest priority to our lowest priority. Okay. Okay. So an example of this Earlier, we talked about our needs and wants. So an example of this, the highest priority would be basically putting all of our needs first. Anything, all like our rent, transportation, basic utilities, including those are the most important things for our survival, right? And then you might consider your debt. But in this scenario, if you notice, I put minimum payments. Sometimes we have credit cards, debit cards that we're only debt of, the minimum payment might be $25, but we're paying 100, we're paying 200, depending, everybody's different what they can pay. Sometimes you pay more, right? And that's what they teach you. That's what we teach normally is you have to pay more than your minimum debt in order to get out of your debt. But for the purpose of the scenario, what we're going to do is we're putting all of our needs first, all of our essentials, and for our debt, we're only doing the very minimum payment. And third step would be our financial goals. I'm actually going to hold off talking about that right now, but normally it'd be reducing debt or saving, right? So either you're saving $50 a month, $100 a month, your ideal goal, and you make that as part of your expenses. You're already accounting for that. Your wants, like I said, now for your wants, I would prioritize those non-essentials we talked about earlier, non-negotiables we talked about earlier. So the example of the family I gave earlier, that Netflix is one of those things that has become very important to their family. This would be the very first one on that list. And then other ones might follow would be maybe eating out, maybe, I know gym memberships are not open right now, but gym memberships, any other things that you can think of that might be important. But even then, I would set a limit on that and put it from highest priority to lowest priority. Okay. So now I'm gonna, building off of this one, I wanna go ahead and focus on this second stage here where I had mentioned paying the minimum payments, right? So we did this right here. Let's say we did 1 through 4. I want to go ahead and discuss some debt reduction strategies that we tend to use. And you probably already heard of these, but I'm just going to, snowball method. So snowball method would be targeting your debt from smallest to largest, regardless of the interest rate. Right? Avalanche method would be targeting debts from highest interest first. And then debt consolidation just rolls up all your debts into one single payment. And we'll go ahead and review this a little bit. Okay, so snowball method, the most popular one, right? Reason being is that snowball method is based on the idea of what we were sharing earlier, behavioral economics, where if we see our debts slowly going away, we tend to get excited, we tend to get motivated. So the idea here is, here, let's say the scenario, I'm Walter, this is my debt here, let's say. So for my 5 credit cards or loans, I have a car for number 1. For number 2, I have a Visa card, the minimum payment is 100. I got another loan for 300, and I got a MasterCard for 50 and a Costco card for 40. Those are my minimum payments, right? And under payments, at the very bottom where it says total, if I gather all the minimum payments of my debt, the total is $790, right? So it's $790 including minimum payments. But like how I mentioned earlier, sometimes we like to give a little bit more, right? So the idea here also, once we do the 1 through 4 on this stage here, and we have money left over, we already had some limits on our wants, and we have money left over. What we're going to use is whatever money we have left over, is we're going to use it to place it back into our debt. And in this scenario here, in this example, is we had $210. After we did steps 1 through 4, we had $210 remaining in this scenario, right? So in total, we have $1,000 that we can use to address all credit cards and all debt. So what we're going to do is we're going to list our debt from smallest balance to largest balance. Right? What we're going to do is we're going to spend all the remaining money beside the minimum payment towards the first debt. And then in this example, it's going to take us 9 months to pay off. As soon as we finish paying off that first card, whatever money we were using to pay off that first card is going to roll over to the MasterCard. Once we complete that, whatever money we were using then is going to roll to the Visa card, and so on and so forth. So the idea of the snowball effect is that once you get going, you create that habit and you're going on and tackling your debt and you're motivated to do so. And you see one removed, you see the second one being removed, you see the third one being removed, and now you've created a pattern. Okay. However, the snowball effect is not the one that's going to save you the most money. It's just the one that's probably going to get you the most excited. This is the one to be more motivated. Just the second method, it's called the avalanche method, which you would be targeting your card with the highest interest. And you're now listing them from the highest interest to the lowest interest, and using the same method. So we still have $1,000 just to use on our debt. So this is that scenario. Oh, I know it doesn't list the interest on here, but in this scenario, it goes back and shuffles things around and listing them from the highest interest to lowest interest. And this is the method that's going to save you the most money. And I have actually, at the end of this presentation, when you're going to get an email, you're going to get this template, and you're going to be able to plug in your own debt, whatever it may be. You're going to have to look at your balances, the total interest you're being charged on them, and then you're going to plug in, going back to the scenario, you're going to plug in how much money you have to go towards that in general. And it does a very nice graph about breaking down how long is it going to take you to pay it off, by when, and you'll be motivated to continue making your payments. So I hope that's going to be a nice resource for you. So hopefully you like it. Okay, and then the last of these methods, and like I said, there's many other methods you can use for debt reduction, but it would be debt consolidation, right? So debt consolidation, like I said before, is combining all your credit cards and putting it into one personal loan or one loan, right? And the idea is that those credit cards with the higher interest, you remove that high interest and you put it into one payment, and now the minimum payment, it's a lot better for you to, you do it typically when you don't feel like you're getting anywhere with your credit card, so that you do it into one payment. This method, however, is great because it saves you in interest, but it's also very risky, because if we're looking at human behavior, what we tend to do is once we have consolidated everything and we still have these other 4 or 5 credit cards available, what we might tend to do or gravitate to is if we have a financial emergency, is that we might go ahead and tap into those other credit cards and say, oh, I'm just using it for this emergency, I'll pay it back later. But then as time goes on, you no longer have just that one debt. You're back to square one. You have 2 or 3 credit cards again, which you've tapped into. And in that case, that consolidation didn't work out for you. It's a great method, but typically, if we're basing it on behavior, it's one of those things that we tend to gravitate to and is easily accessible. So if we do go this route, what I highly recommend to a lot of the participants is to physically cut up your credit cards, not close out your credit cards, which is a whole different thing, because you don't want them to be removed from your credit history. They'll just be cut off the credit cards, you don't physically see them. If there is ever a time for you to go back to them, you can always reorder them online, and it'll only take you about 2 weeks to get them back in the mail. Okay, so some pro tips really quickly. When you're creating a budget or when going and doing your personal finances, it's always better to write out a plan, really commit to your budget, bring it into smaller goals, smaller steps, and share it with your family, share it with a friend, have something that will hold you accountable. Same, we compared it to a diet earlier. Same thing as doing it with a diet. Have somebody, something we fall off of it, but it's, as long as we pick ourselves back up, life is always changing. And then when you're making your next purchase, we didn't really touch bases on what are some best practices to reducing some of your expenses, to cut out expenses. But ask yourself, did I compare prices? Is this something I really need? Is it going towards my goals in right now, and how long is it going to prolong my goal? Okay, so I'm actually coming towards the end of the presentation. I did want to share a lot of resources, and I think we're going to go ahead and send it in an email. There's some free resources available to the community. There's Vital sites. I know a lot of us didn't get the chance to do tax before everything shut down, but there are some Vital sites who do a free tax preparation. We're going to be sharing the link of how you can find the closest tax preparation near you. Body of Action is one of those sites. So if you live within the LA City region, we can help you out. I personally will help you out with doing your taxes. So I can be one of those resources. There is some limitations, but we can touch bases on that later if you reach out to me. I shared some budgeting worksheets. And I know right now for a lot of the small businesses, they're going through really tough times. There are some loans available either at very low interest or no interest at all. So I've also shared some links to that. And there's other great resources if you're thinking about savings and credit. And then I know I'm not trying to promote any specific banking products, but there's also credit unions are available to help out the community. They do a lot of community-based work for folks that have ITINs. There's credit unions tend to be the place to go to if you're ever if you're an ITIN holder and you're ever looking for bank accounts, because I know not all banks accept ITINs. I can definitely be a resource to you if you're looking for a specific bank account. And yes, the check systems, it's another resource for you to use. You can always check how your standing is with the banks. And a very, very important resource to use is the annualcreditreport.com. So annualcreditreport.com, typically you would only have one credit pull per year, per agent, per company. But now with the CARES Act, you're able to view your credit report at least once a week. So that's a good resource to use. So you don't have to use like other agents like Credit Karma. You can go straight to the source. If you're in the nonprofit world and you're looking for educational resources, you're trying to find things or videos to share with your community, these are some of the biggest resources that I find useful. CFPB, then there's Millionaire Stories, which is a new platform, which there's a football player, I forgot his name right now on top of my head, who's promoting this. So he's creating YouTube videos for youth, talking about how to do money management. Prosperity Now is the leading agency right now for research on economic mobility. And there's also, if you're trying to approach finances from a social work perspective, the Center for Financial Social Work is a great resource as well. Okay. Here is my contact information. Thank you for listening into this workshop. Once again, my name is Walter Cruz. Here's my email. It's wcruz@bodyofaction.org. Here is my office number. And then you can follow my organization on Instagram or Twitter at Body of Action. Thank you. And then I think we're going to be opening it up to any questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Walter. And also, if you could put your information into the chat so folks can see that and write that down. So now is the time. If you have any question, you can write it into the chat box, and I'll read them out loud for Walter to answer. Okay, one question here. Walter, do you recommend saving or paying off debt first?
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I think I got muted there. So I actually would recommend you to have that emergency fund first. Kind of like the same idea that we were talking about earlier is create that emergency fund if, especially during this time, I think there was a statistic of, there was two spectrums, right? People that got really affected by COVID and there's other people that had the opportunity to still continue working from home and savings went up. I would actually recommend you to always have some cushion to fall on in case something ever happened. So my recommendation would be either whether it's 500, whether it's $1,000, whatever you think would be best for you, to start off with that emergency fund. Once you have that nice cushion, go back and then start tackling some of that debt you have. And then that way, you're not just focusing on your debt, and then something happens, and then you have to resort to getting a personal loan or to getting another credit card, and then you just start the cycle all over. So I think it's very important for you to have that cushion, and then from there you feel you have that comfort, and then you can move forward to tackling that debt.
Thank you. Question from Jesus Becerra. What are some student loan resources for those who are sent to collections?
Oh, okay. So I don't have one on top of my head, but I do have a resource where you can they actually have pro bono lawyers and everything that they can help you out with that process. I know that recently now that they just passed a new law based on student loans for all the schools that were closing out, some or their example from the right university, and there was a lot of they were getting a lot of students were basically cheated out of their student loans, right? So I can definitely, if you email me, I can follow up with you on that. I don't have the resource from the top of my head, but I can help you. I can send something your way.
Thank you. This is if you want to connect with Walter. Another question from Louise. How would you coach someone who got off track from his or her goals? How do we re-energize, refocus the client to continue and not give up on their goals?
I think it will be creating a strategy with them, something they can visualize, right? I think it's sometimes whether they're an individual, finding what motivates them, seeing it on the board. What I tend to do is having them draw out what is it that they envision, right? It's okay. We always fall off track, and finance is going to be always an imperfect road. It's going to be bumps along the way, and then not falling all the way down completely. And I think I tend to use those three strategies we gave earlier, which was journaling, mind mapping, something that you can visually see at all times. And I think if you had that opportunity to motivate them in the first place, I think you can find that motivation for them again. Have them think about not just now within the first 6 months, have them think about a year, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, where they would like to see themselves in the future. And that's really the best way I can put it into perspective, I guess.
Right. Yeah, it happens to all of us, Luis. So definitely, like you said, Walter, if you fall off, it's okay. Just getting back on the horse and visualizing those. So thank you for that question. One question here is, do I have to pay to check my credit report once a week?
No, you don't. Not right now. And I think it's up until December that it got extended. So for this whole year, you can go ahead and choose one of the three major credit bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, and the other one's slipping out of my head. But you can go to either one of those through annualcreditreport.com, and you can check those weekly right now. Before it used to be once a year, and I would recommend the participants before check it every 4 months with a different agency. That way you're getting different views. And the biggest difference from the three of them is that they use a different formula to calculate your credit score. Most of them will have the same information. It will have your whole history, and it'll have your payment history. But you have the opportunity to look at them every week now. Same website, annualcreditreport.com. Luis
Gomez shared not through annualcreditreport.com. Just don't fall for the fake ones. Community knowledge. Thank you, Luis, for sharing.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna leave it open for any last questions. Again, you can type that into the chat box. Okay. So if Walter, you can move on to the next slide to share our platforms. So as I've mentioned before, this is our first monthly webinar. Each webinar will cover different topics about personal finance and financial stability. If you would like to stay up to date with upcoming webinars, you can follow us on our social media platforms and register on our website. This webinar will be posted on our Facebook account. So if you weren't able to jot down notes or you feel like you want to go back, that will be available there. We'll also be sending you the resources and sheets that Walter mentioned throughout this presentation in an email. And yeah, just want to thank you all for joining us. I hope everyone stays safe and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.